I really don't remember what happened here.
Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess, and today I want to give you some fantasy recommendations. So if you have watched any of my videos or follow me on Instagram, you know that I love fantasy. Is definitely my favorite genre to read, and I primarily read adult fantasy. So I want to give you 5 adult fantasy series that are finished. Yes, completed, finished, all the books are out. There are so many other fantasy series that are great, but they're not finished, or I haven't finished them. So I've read all of these books. So I feel like I can honestly recommend them to you. And all of these series are 4-star and above, like overall. The first one I'm going to start with is a trilogy, the Winternight Trilogy by Katherine Arden. So the first one, we have The Bear and the Nightingale. Then we have The Girl in the Tower. And finally, The Winter of the Witch. I really love this book. I gave it 4 stars. I gave the second one 5, and I gave the last one 4.5. So the Winternight Trilogy is really, it's set in Russia, and it's very like based on Russian myths and fairy tales. And we have our main character, Vasya, and she doesn't want to do the traditional thing and get married and have children. She wants to be independent. She loves riding horses, loves being out in nature, and of course, her family and everyone thinks she's very strange because of that. And so she gets accused of being a witch, and she has to basically fight against essentially the patriarchy, but other things, because there's like mythical creatures that are popular in Russian fairy tales, and I love them. They're so atmospheric, but without being dull, because some books can be very atmospheric but not have a lot of story. I will say the first one is the slowest because it's more character driven and really setting up the lore and the rest of the series, but I still really enjoyed it. Her writing is beautiful, and I love these books so much. When a book can get me to love like an animal, sold. And there is a horse in these books that I love so much. I also did love the main character and other characters in these books, but I think that if you have any interest in like Russian fairy tales or a story set in Russia, you want something, this is definitely good to read. If you want something very wintry feeling, I definitely think you would enjoy these. But heed what I said about the first one. Don't go in expecting very action-packed. It's definitely more of a character-driven story, and you're getting more like history and lore, but still worth it. Highly recommend. All right, the next one I have is another trilogy, and that is the Mistborn trilogy. I'm not taking it out of the box. This is the UK box set of Mistborn Era 1. So I am including this because this trilogy does stand by itself. It wraps up. It's one of my favorite endings I've ever read personally, and that's saying a lot because I'm very picky. So you can definitely just read this because it is finished. Now there is Mistborn Era 2 that is not, and I think Brandon even has plans for an Era 3 and Era 4. Basically the world evolving over time, but you don't have to continue. This is a self-contained story, and basically this is what if the bad guy won. So, you know, years ago there was a fight between good and evil won. And so we have Vin, who's a street urchin, who's not my favorite person, but whatever. And she meets up with this group, a ragtag group, another trope that I love in books. And they basically are trying to save the world eventually. That's very general, but I love the magic system because, so in this book, they manipulate metals. So like one person can manipulate copper and they have a certain ability. Another person can manipulate nickel and they have a certain ability, but a Mistborn is more rare because they can manipulate all of the metals. I think there's 8 or 10. And so they can have all of the abilities. And it's just, they are really good. The second one is a little slower, bridging things together, but again, like I said, the ending is so amazing. Like, Oh, the twist and the wrap up. I was like, what? Really love this one. So don't be intimidated. You don't have to continue, or you continue later on, because it just builds upon itself since it's in the same world, but it's like, I think thousands of years later, or at least hundreds of years later in Mistborn Era 2. And Mistborn Era 2 is more Western. So the world is like developing over time, but you can just read the Mistborn trilogy and be done. Let's see. Okay. All right, now we're moving up in book count. This is, I guess, the quartet, and it is the Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. I'm trying to pick them all up, but there's some big, big floppy paperbacks. Hopefully you can see them. They're beautiful. It starts with Malice. Oh my God. And then we have Ruin. No, wrong. Wait. Starts with Malice. Then we have Valor. Then we have Ruin. And the final one is Wrath. So I have recently finished. Oh my God. My limbs are so wild. I did recently finish this series, and overall I really loved it. My favorite are the first one, Malice, and the third one, Ruin. The second book for me, I don't know if it was me, if I was like in a reading slump, but it kind of went slower. And then the fourth one, I didn't love it as much, like the ending, which I talked about in my August wrap up, I think, but still gave the ending 4 stars. This is a book I recommend for people who are fans of Game of Thrones, because very similar. There's a lot of characters. There is a prophecy, and there's a fight between good and evil. So we have Corbin, our main character, who is kind of set up to be that chosen one. But there are a lot of twists and turns that kind of change the story. But other aspects that I love of it, he has a wolven, like a wolf cub, kind of like Jon Snow, you know, in Game of Thrones. And her name is Storm, and I love her. But there's really a found family aspect, because he has his own family, but then people that band together to help him fight, and they become like, the friendships are just so precious. And so I love that aspect of it. There's also giants, and there's, you know, the angelic race, and then there's the demonic race. So overall, I really, really enjoyed this series. Like I said, there are a lot of characters, so a lot of alternating points of views, which is good and bad. Good because the chapters are short, and so for me that helps it go by faster, but can be a lot when you're first starting, because you're like trying to remember all the people. And I took kind of a break in between these. I think I read Malice 2 years ago, and I'm just now finishing, so there are a cast of characters in the beginning, but reading the final book, I did have to refresh myself on who was who. But overall, I really loved these books. And again, they're finished. If you like Game of Thrones and you're sad because that is not finished, this is finished, and they're 4 books. I mean, they are thick. They are some thickums now, but you get these nice floppy paperbacks. Yeah, Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. And I think he has another series, maybe a trilogy set in this world, but maybe like 1,000 years later. I haven't read that one. I don't have that one yet. Maybe later down the road. But for now, I feel very content that I finished this series. All right, we're back to a trilogy, and that's the Daevabad Trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. We've got the City of Brass, the Kingdom of Copper, I don't know if you can see that because of the covering, and the Empire of Gold. These books are so beautiful. This is also a series I recently finished. The Empire of Gold came out the end of June, and I think I read it in August, maybe, and I loved it. These are all 5 stars for me. The Daevabad Trilogy is a historical adult fantasy set in the Middle East, and I think the 18th century. The main character, Nahri, is a con artist, essentially. She's about 20, I think. She doesn't have any family or friends, and so she's basically on the streets of Cairo hustling. And she just thinks she is this regular person, but with just an affinity for healing. And so that kind of gets her in trouble. She ends up conjuring an ancient jinn warrior named Dara. and chaos ensues. They have to travel to this magical city, Daevabad, where she meets the prince, Ali, and there's political intrigue and there's magic, and she finds out about her history and the history of the city, and there's warring clans, and there's so much. Oh my God. The writing is phenomenal. The world building, Shannon, she did that. I just read them and I just can picture, it's just like, they're masterpieces. They're so well written. All the characters are extremely complex, and it's not, at first they may seem one way, but I feel like they have so many layers. They're like an onion or a parfait. They have layers. They're complicated. They're beautiful. These books are beautiful. I love it. I love the ending. It ripped my heart to pieces, but I was satisfied with the ending, even though I was bawling my eyes out. Again, I'm tired of seeing people categorize these as YA because they're not. This is an adult fantasy series, and it's wonderful, and I love Shannon, and I cannot wait to read her next books, which are like pirates. I don't even like pirates, but I know Shannon will make me love pirates, so read these. Wow, that's out of order, but you know what I'm saying. Last, but certainly not least, not at all. I need to talk about these books more, but I'm just getting emotional. I have the Rairia Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan. I don't know who these are based off of, but these are my boos. So the Rairia Revelations was originally self-published, I believe, and then Orbit picked it up. So there are 6 books, but they're in these volumes. So volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3, but 6 books total. Woo! These are so good. They're very like a traditional fantasy story. We've got wizards and elves and a hero and a journey, but what makes these books stand out are the characters. Okay, we have Hadrian and Royce. I just need a moment. I love them so much. If you love banter, you will love these books. They are definitely a lighter fantasy that are fun, but there are some really serious and heartbreaking moments. But these two, epic bromance, the definition of it. They are so funny. Hadrian is like the chivalrous one. He wants to do right. He wants to save the lady and, he's honor bound and all of this. Royce is ready to slit your throat, at any turn. He will double cross you. He thinks everybody sucks and is evil. He's so angry, and I love it. Their dynamic is so perfect. They're a pair of thieves. They're like highly renowned in the kingdom, and they get offered this job, but it turns out to be a trap, and they have to figure out how to get out of that. And that's just the very beginning of the story. It becomes way more complex than that, but still, I think this is still a really good entry level to adult fantasy. I love these so much. I need to reread them. I had so much fun reading them. I think the first one was my least favorite, and I still give it 4 stars. It was just a little bit of a slower start, but the characters make everything. I used to think that I needed exactly 50-50 character and plot in a story, and I still am not saying this is a bad plot. I still really liked the story and the plot lines, but the characters won out in this for me. Like, if your characters aren't good, the story it can never be perfect. Royce and Hadrian. And there's other characters. There's Myron, who's the sweetest cinnamon roll that ever lived. Oh my God. I love these. I love these books so damn much. So if you're not ready for something like Brandon Sanderson heavy or something like The Faithful and the Fallen, because that's a lot going on, a lot of characters and POVs, I think this is a great entry to adult fantasy, definitely lighter and lighthearted. If you read these and you don't love Hadrian and Royce, I really think that you're wrong, because they're the best. I Wow. There is a prequel series, the Rairia Chronicles, which I have not read yet, and I need to, but I want to reread this. But these 6, you can just read these. And I have seen some people talk about them. I don't feel like they get enough love. They're just my favorite. As you can tell, I've been gushing over them for the last couple of minutes, but you should read that. Read it, read it, read it. And if you don't like it, again, you're wrong. Sorry. But those are my 5. And obviously there's more. I need to think of other ones that I finished, but I wanted to only recommend series that I finished and that I loved, because everything I finished I don't love. So those are my 5 recommendations. Of course, I list them in the description below. Do you have any fantasy series, adult fantasy series that are finished that you would recommend to me, or any that you're interested in reading? Are you interested in reading any of these, or have you read them? Have you read this one is really what I want to know. I want to know if you have read this book, these books. I really want to drop everything and just reread these. I will say I tried to reread them via audio and I did not like the narrator, so I couldn't, because I could just play The Sims for hours and listen to the audiobook. But no, the narrator sucks, so I can't do that. Oh, I love these so much. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you give it a thumbs up and subscribe for future shenanigans in my content. As always, check the description for stuff. Please register to vote. I don't know when this video is coming out, so I don't know if that's below, but please vote. Please, please, please. And take care of yourself. Wash your mask, wear your mask, stay hydrated, moisturize, put on sunscreen, stand back, give people 6 feet. And as always, tell me anything in the comments, engage with me in the comments, but I thank you for watching. See you in my next one. Bye. The chivalrous, okay. Hadrian is the chivalrous, I cannot say that word.